With our college campus completed and up and running, it's time to expand. This city has struggled to keep afloat, and the number one reason for that is that I've only just zoned enough residential to keep up with the running costs of the city services. So today we're going to build a little neighbourhood. In fact, it's a pretty big neighbourhood. We're going to actually use up all of the land on these two parcels. I'm going to amend our existing road infrastructure to support it, then I'll pick a few interesting local road layouts to build. There's a few city services that will require our attention, and I'm going to do my best not to destroy the whole thing with my clumsy use of some of the great mods that we have at our disposal. The main detail and focus on this build will be an apartment block development. I'll touch on some new mod additions and features a little bit later on in the video, and I'll try and create a few nice sub areas within the build as well. So our first task here is to extend our arterial road network. I'm sticking with the big grid system for this, and I'm not going to do anything fancy with these crossroad arterial junctions really until I have to. Obviously this temporary access road needs to go. Now I'm going to run the arterial as far as I can for now. We'll need to break the grid obviously as the other big networks are in place right beside it, but I'll come back and explain what I'll be doing with that in just a minute. Before I go on to that, I'm going to do a half diamond here terminating and coming from this minor road. Usually you see this type of design on an elevated highway, maybe near a downtown. Basically, two ramps terminate on a lower road, and then you'll have another two ramps that will terminate on a different lower road, maybe a bit further down the highway. You'll usually see the ramps on the outside of the highway, but as we're pushed for space and we're pretty close up to the residential properties here, I'm going to run one of the ramps in between the highway lanes. In a later episode, I'll be completing this interchange network by providing similar ramps on the other side of the bridge, so the other side of the water, and we'll give both of the minor roads access to the highway and the arterial. So essentially we've got an interchange that spans across the water. I'm not expecting huge amounts of traffic even as the city grows here on this one. Obviously we're right up against the coast, but that said we can always revisit the configuration, probably more so on the little minor road, and we can maybe add some more capacity if we have to. So let's get these in quickly and then I'll maybe just tidy these up a bit off camera. While I'm here, I'm going to tidy up the rail lines while I'm at it. I'm going to just draw a marker. Up to that marker we're going to use key walls, and then we're just going to smooth out the slope and it should look much better. To complete our big arterial block, we'll need these roads hooked up as well. So just a case of sloping up, getting it in nice and smooth. You can see this riverbed is run dry. I messed up and removed the water source at some point, so I'm going to have to address that as well. The next bit of prep I want to do is extend the grid north. So let's mark out where I want these rail lines not to be a key wall basically, and flatten out where we need our road. And after a little adjustment or two, I'm going to reconnect the rail as a couple of bridge sections. Get it tidied up with a bit of terraforming, and I think that's a really nice result. We've got a couple of arterials going over the highway, and then we've got a couple of rail lines going over the arterials. Excellent. So that's us pretty much organised for expansion here. So we're going to zone both of these sections. So zone 1 here first, I'm going to run collector roads from about the halfway point between the grid junctions on the arterial. Now I thought this area was flat, so let's just sort this out now. And actually while I'm here, I think I'll extend that arterial over the water just now. If I don't do it now, I'll forget. You can see now where I plan to have the other half of that diamond interchange in place. Just basically mirror what we've created on the north bank. So for the layout here, in the first part of the expansion, I've had a look along the Gulf Coast again, and I landed randomly on Mississippi City, which I believe is now classed as a neighbourhood of Gulfport, Mississippi. I've taken a few of the road layouts from there and I'm going to be using them as a basis for the build. I'm going to knock up a bit of a broken grid system here, then something of a square layout. We're going to give some cul-de-sac access. On the three subsections of this development on this side of the arterial, I wanted to introduce some medium density housing to satisfy some of that demand. And again, having a look on Google Maps, I found a few apartment blocks surrounding what looks like private swimming pools. It looked pretty nice, so it's going to make it into the build. I'm just going to mark it out for now and we'll get the layout finished once I can see the scale of the buildings on the ground. And we'll see how it fits in. So let's crack on with the zoning. I'm going to mix it up a bit. I want a mix of plot sizes, and for some parts I'll be leaving gaps that we can fill in with trees and vegetation. I want everything to have good walking links, so plenty of paths are going to be going in. And in some areas, mostly the kind of gridded sections, I'm going to pack it in a lot more densely. Alright, so that should be most of the zoning. A couple of little additions needs to be done, but let's hook up this road along the water. I want a few little parks in here. And I'm going to introduce a little strip of commercial to serve the neighbourhood. For the apartment blocks, I'm going to overlap some medium EU 3x2s with Anarchy. I want to get the blocks and the swimming pools in place, and as I said earlier on, wasn't sure about the scale of the assets, so best thing to do is get them planked in and then we'll take it from there. Now with the main buildings in place, I'll need to add the pools and the paving. I wasn't too sure on that part of the build, so I decided to zone around it and hopefully get a bit more perspective on how the final product would end up looking. While I'm waiting on that to fill in, I think it's time to check the health of the city. So once we're done with this expansion, we should, all going well, have a lot more money to play with. So let's have a look at the Sims happiness metrics. The pressing issues are high taxes, high crime, unreliable healthcare and mail coverage, as well as not having walking distance to the elementary schools. Well, the taxes are staying, I don't care, we have plenty of demand, I need the money, but most of the others should be pretty straightforward to address. Jumping into the police info tab, we can see that there are a few buildings with fairly high crime in our beach hotel. We do have a police station in there already, and it's not been upgraded, so let's get the garage extension in. And that upgrade on the police station should give us an extra 6 patrol cars, which will help. I think there's scope to introduce another station where we're expanding, so I'll reserve judgment on that till later on in the build. We can check back in and see how we're getting on. There we go, they're on the case straight away. I'm going to pop down a post office over here. I was originally planning on doing a full build around it, but I've got other ideas for that, so this is just going to be a temporary location for now. Regardless of its location, we can still crack on and get the post boxes in. So let's have a look at where we have patchy coverage, and we'll look to plug some of those gaps. Of course, we'll need coverage in the new development as well, so let's get them plonked down. And now that we have some essential city needs addressed, it's time to revisit our apartment blocks. And it was just too spaced out. I want to have things a little bit more compact. So I'm going to move it out here and we'll rejig some of the location of the blocks and the pools. Let's squish it all together a bit. And while we're doing this, I'll obviously have to rejig the lanes. We'll have to rejig the paths as we go along. I'm going to retain some of that open space that opened up there between the block and the small homes towards the coast. I think that area is going to be perfect for a little bit of manicured park. And that's looking much better, isn't it? Yeah, much more like it. As I pulled out the collector for our adjacent future development, I kind of remembered that we have these little farm buildings here. I think I'm going to keep them. Could be a nice dealing opportunity for another day perhaps. While I'm here, I want to sort out that river that I missed out. So it's just a case of adding water sources. Let's give that a go. Nope. Nope, that's not it. Nope. 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 Damn it. Okay, happy with that one. Ah, for In the end, I just filled it up. and remove the water source. I'll come back, I'll sort it another day, I'm losing the will. So again, grabbing a few layouts from Mississippi City, I'm going to go for a looped design on one side of the road, and I'm going to get a super basic grid set up on the other. I'm not going to do too much detailing over here other than spending a bit of time getting some appropriate trees and soften the place up a little bit. These areas, again, they're more about just getting population in and boosting the city funds, which is really necessary. I think where the grid meets Collector Road, it could be a good spot for some city services that we need, and maybe another small strip of local businesses. I want this area to be pretty tightly packed, and I'm going to zone a mix of standard and beach property, low residential here. As you can probably tell from other parts of the city, if you've seen previous episodes, I like to create leafy suburbs, and this one will be no different in terms of getting the vegetation done. So I'm going to use the same medium deciduous trees. Once they're in place, I'm going to soften the whole thing up with, again, with the smaller oaks, and I'm going to cover mostly everything within the build, but not the apartment blocks. That's going to be reserved for a bit more heavy detailing, which we'll get to in a few minutes. So this episode so far has mostly been about meeting our city needs through expansion and meeting the needs of our citizens whilst creating a few interesting layout designs. The next part of the video is all detailing, and the focus of this work is very much focused on our apartment blocks. I wanted to create some service areas for our blocks, really just as an excuse to expand the asset as such and make it unique. I'm going to build a little area about 2 paths wide at the end of most of the blocks. The good news here is that now that we have extra detailing tools mod available from Triton Supreme, there's a load of stuff to run through with this mod. It's really quite exceptional. I'm going to be using it extensively in our next video, which is going to be an auto salvage yard. It's coming together really nicely, and I'm excited to be sharing that with you guys very soon, so keep an eye out for that. For this build, I'm going to use the brick surface. I'll fence it off using the new fencing capability, which is incredibly easy to use and a really welcome addition. And then I'm just going to plop down a few trash and bin assets. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Major feature in this new mod's the ability to use decals. You can use them to add dirt, stains or weather effects on your build. By clicking the decal a couple of times, you can make the effect more pronounced. So here we're creating really dirty bin areas. It's pretty cool, huh? As I said, I'm only going to be touching the surface of these mods on here. We'll really be getting into it on the next build. The next bit of detail is a little dog park. You guys want to see my dog in the dog park? You do? Okay, here she is. This is Jura. She's a beauty, isn't she? Right, let's fence it off. And I'm going to use the oil surface here. A bit later in the build, I'll revisit the surfaces and we'll give it a little bit more texture as we go along. I'm just going to throw all the dog objects in here, then add a few trees, a couple of bushes underneath, and we'll give our doggies something to sniff. Let's create a secure gate. We don't want anybody escaping here. And for the really smart dogs, we'll give them a little plank to walk. Nice one. So all that's left to do here is just sort out the surface work. Now I'm going to create a custom path network in this area. So if you're doing it yourself, just draw out a normal path as a guide. Surf it around it with your chosen surface, and then delete the path. Rinse and repeat, and once you've got them all done, you just need to draw an invisible pedestrian path and you're good to go. Sims will use this. Gonna stick in a few park assets here, benches, lights, etc., and we'll be good to go. Nothing too fancy. And I'm going to use a similar technique for the private car parking here. I'll get the invisible car park in first, and then we'll surface over it, add a bit more detail once they're in place. In fact, a lot of this build actually is surface work. I'll need to expand out what already exists, and we'll tidy things up a bit as well. For the back gardens, I want to stretch them and expand them out to actually end. Do you know what the paths that we've put in? So you can remove these built-in hedges and fences now using the updated bulldozer tool rather than the dev tool, which is really nice, saves quite a bit of time. At this point, I'm going to crack on with detailing these areas between the blocks. I'll pop it on a bit of a time lapse and I'll catch up with you in a few minutes for a quick review. Here's a quick example of how you can use these new decals to layer up an area and add some realistic textures to your build. Here I'm going to use some moss vegetation decals around the bushes, and we'll add some light and some dark textures to the gravel looking areas. And what a difference that makes, right? It's cool. The next build's going to take this to the next level, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Before I get on to the review, I just want to say a quick thank you to my Patreon and YouTube members. Incredible support from you guys as always. Thank you very much. So there we go folks, we've got some very much needed residential zoning in the city now. We've got our arterial road network expanded to the north and the south, ready to be hooked up, ready for future expansion areas. If you ever struggle for layouts, just get yourself on Google Maps and have a look what's out there. Adapt it for your own city's use. There's lots of interesting designs, and if you have a look about, you can mix and match them and create something a bit more interesting to look at rather than just grids everywhere. Of course, you can grid some pretty expansive areas, and that'll still be pretty realistic depending on what you're trying to achieve. I don't know if I entirely love the little commercial strips on this build, but I thought it was important to get something in to service the neighbourhood, so they will stay. As I said, the aim of this build wasn't really to have the whole area super detailed, but rather get something in that looks like it fits the city appropriately and can accommodate the population that we need to make the city run smoothly from a cash flow point of view. Our little dog park came out pretty nice. I'm pretty happy with that little corner. And the main detailing effort in this episode obviously was our apartment blocks, and I think it came out looking like it's somewhere pretty nice to live. Taking the time to expand those gardens at the back, along with the extra tree and hedge work, I think has really brought everything together. I reckon adjusting the positions of the building was definitely the right shout. Making everything a bit more compact in terms of the layout really made sense. I noticed after I recorded quite a few of the props went missing, so I'll need to pick that up and get that sorted off camera. Those swimming pools are a nice addition. I'm happy with the scale of them rather than using the custom ones we created, commercial ones in previous episodes. But I'm not sure about the Olympic sized diving pools at the back. I wish I could delete them. And I've only really just scratched the surface of the new detailing tools in this episode, but the difference you can make adding textures via the decals and the surfaces is vast. You can see that in the dog park, the trash service areas, and on the custom roads and car parks. Very excited for our next episode where I'm going to be going to town on that kind of stuff. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and here's a couple more videos to keep you entertained. Thank you.